This will be our third installment of How to Eat Fried Worms by Thomas Rockwell. Remember, this is a read along. The words are on the screen so that you can read along with me while listening to the story at the same time. Chapter 20 Billy's Mother. Billy slumped at the kitchen table on one elbow, pawing his bowl of Wheaties with his spoon. His mother was washing the breakfast dishes in the sink. But why isn't it good to eat hot dogs for breakfast? I know nobody does, but why don't they? Oh, Billy, said his mother, stop it. Finish your cereal. Well, but a knock on the screen door. Billy's mother glanced around. Oh, hello, Alan, Joe. Is your sister better, Joe? Yes, thank you. Billy can't come out till he's finished his breakfast. Would you like to wait for him on the front porch? We came to see you, Mrs. Forrester. Oh? Come in. Mrs. Forrester, said Joe, as Alan shut the door carefully behind them. I don't know if you know about it already, but see, about a week ago, Alan made this bet with Billy about eating worms. If Billy could eat 15 worms, one each day for 15 days, then Billy, you're not still eating them. Billy stuffed a spoonful of Wheaties into his mouth. Not just worms, Mom. I've been eating lots of other stuff, too. Look at me. I'm healthy. Dr. McGrath told you worms wouldn't hurt me. But Billy, Dr. McGrath didn't think you're going to keep on eating worms. Joe nudged Alan and grinned. Aw, Mom, if 5 worms wouldn't hurt me, a few more won't either. They're little worms. Besides, it's a bet. They're big worms, Mrs. Forrester, said Joe, looking virtuous. We won't lie to you. My mother told me never to tell a lie. Manure, said Billy. Mom, it's a bet. I told you, if I win, Alan's got to pay me $50. $50? Young man, don't you move from that chair. She went off into the front hall. Thanks, Billy whispered, but you'll see. It won't work. Alan and Joe gazed nonchalantly at the ceiling. Billy's mother's voice came in from the front hall. Dr. McGrath, I'm awful sorry to bother you again. This is such a ridiculous matter, but since I spoke to you, Billy has continued to eat worms. Pause. No, it's nothing like that. He's acting perfectly normal otherwise. It seems he's made a bet with some other boys. Pause. One every day. He has to eat 15 to win his bet. Pause. Oh, thank you, Dr. McGrath. I'm sorry to bother. She returned to the kitchen. But no more bets after this one, Billy. Alan and Joe, you don't egg him on anymore. He's far too eager to do wild things. Billy yucked silently at Joe and Alan. Alan made a rude gesture at him. Mrs. Forrester, said Joe, what we really came about is that Alan and me are going up to Lake Lauderdale today with my father to fish, and we won't be back till tomorrow night, so we wondered if you'd make sure Billy eats his worms today and tomorrow. It's not that we don't trust Billy, Mrs. Forrester. No, said Billy's mother, smiling. But it's always better if there's a referee. You know, like Mr. Simmons at school says, to save arguments and hard feelings, we brought the 2 worms, he held up a paper bag. We boiled them already, so you can just keep them in the refrigerator. Well, said Billy's mother, this is quite a responsibility. Are you sure I'll be neutral enough? I am his mother. Yeah, we thought of that, said Joe, but we figured, well, you're usually pretty fair, and besides, parents almost never cheat kids if it's something between kids. They're usually pretty fair until they get into it. Billy's mother laughed. And how does he eat them? Just cold boiled? Well, we've been frying them, Mrs. Forrester. We roll them in cornmeal and then fry them like a fish, but he can do whatever he wants, except that Alan and me have decided it's not fair to make soup out of them or chop them up like hash or chicken salad sandwich. He's got to eat them piece by piece. Who said? Said Billy. When was that ever in the rules? We said, shouted Alan. Billy jumped up, kicking his chair over. Well, then I win, because it's cheating to make up new rules in the middle. Oh, yeah, said Alan. Then you'll lose, because anybody knows it'd be cheating to hash it up. You think you're going to weasel out of it after I've already eaten 9? Who's weaseling? You're cheating. Yeah? Yeah. Boys. Billy, Alan. Silence. Please. Now, Billy, I think... No, let me speak first. I do think Alan and Joe are right. It wouldn't be fair to cut the worm all up. You can just think of some other way of fixing it. Thank you, Joe. She took the paper bag and looked inside. Phew, Billy, are you sure? Mom, you've eaten eels. You ate eels last summer on Long Island. These are just smaller. They're the same thing. Well, she put the paper bag in the refrigerator. I guess if Dr. McGrath says it's all right, now why don't you all go outside? I wouldn't go across the street with those finks, said Billy. They can. Yeah, shouted Alan. Well, who'd want you to go anywhere with you either? Yeah, shouted Billy. Boys, cried Mrs. Forrester. Stop it. All right, Alan and Joe, you'd better go. The screen door banged behind them. Pfft, said Billy scornfully. Joe's face appeared at the screen. Thanks for saying you'll help out, Mrs. Forrester. Chapter 21. The 10th Worm. What's for dinner? Said Billy's father, coming into the kitchen. Well, said Billy's mother, you and I and Emily are having hamburgers and string beans and mashed potatoes. Billy's having a fried worm. More worms? The bet's still on? Look. She took a small plate covered with saran wrap out of the refrigerator. And you've eaten 9 of these already, Billy? He poked the worms curiously. What do? Use a lot of ketchup and mustard? Billy nodded. And horseradish and other things. And we fry them. Billy's father lifted a corner of the saran wrap and smelled the worms. Helen, you ought to be able to do better than fried. Use your cookbooks. I'm not the cook. I'm just a referee. Oh, come on. Think of the challenge. He took a cookbook from the shelf under the spice rack. Let's see. Mastering the Art of French Cooking. He leafed through the cookbook. Here. How about poached eels on toast? No, said Billy's mother. It calls for chopping up the eel into little pieces, and that would be against the rules. How about spaghetti and worm balls, then? Or savory worm pie? Creamed worms on toast? Spanish worm? Worm loaf with mushroom sauce? Wait, said Billy's mother, putting down her cooking spoon. It might just. She took the cookbook and turned to the index. Here, she said. Alsatian smothered worm. Dredge the worm with seasoned flour. Saute in 3 tablespoons of drippings until brown. Cover with sliced onions. Pour over 1 cup thick sour cream. Cover pot closely and bake in a slow oven until tender. Bravo, said Billy's father. Put the hamburgers back in the refrigerator. We'll all have worm tonight. I won't, said Emily. Ha, said Billy, grinning in the midst of chewing. Boy, Alan and Joe thought they were doing me in when they came to you, Mom, but this is better than steak. It really tastes good. Yug, muttered Emily, making a face. Let me have a taste, said Billy's father. No, no, said his mother. Billy has to eat every bite himself. Alan and Joe are very firm about that, and I'm the referee. Boy, said Billy, I don't mind it if it tastes like this. Chapter 22. The 11th Worm. How'd you do it? Said Billy. What's it called? My word, said his father. Gosh, Mrs. Forrester, gasped Tom. On a silver dish in front of Billy lay an ice cream cake bathed in fruit syrups, cherry, peach, tutti frutti, candied orange, topped with whipped cream, sprinkled with jelly beans and slivered almond. It's called a whiz-bang worm delight, said Billy's mother proudly. I made it up. Is the worm really in there? Said Billy, poking about with a spoon and then scraping away a bit of whipped cream. Oops. At one end, he glimpsed the worm's snout protruding from the center of the cake. Snug as a bug in a rug, said his mother. I still wouldn't eat a worm, said Emily, eyeing the whiz-bang worm delight with envious distaste. I would, said Tom. At least maybe I would. Chapter 23. Admirals Naguma and Kusaka on the bridge of Akaiga, December 6th, 1941. It won't work. Look, said Joe. Even if he remembers the worm while we're at Shea, he can't get one. Where's anyone going to find a worm at Shea Stadium? Don't worry. We'll say you've won. We'll find a worm after we get home. And we keep right on stuffing him. Peanuts, hot dogs, hamburgers, Cracker Jack, ice cream, orange soda, gum, Mars bars. You know how he loves to eat. You ever see him refuse something to eat? By the time we start home, he'll be bloated, drowsy, belching. Remember the last time when his father took us? He was asleep by the time we hit Peekskill. Your father will carry him in from the car. His mother and father will put him to bed. Next morning, he'll wake up too late. You've won. 15 worms in 15 days. He missed a day. Alan nodded his thumbnail. What about Tom? We'll ask him along and then just not pick him up. We can tell your father and Billy that Tom's mother called. He was sick. His grandmother died. Anything. Just so we don't have to bring him with us. Alan sighed. Geez. It'll probably cost me $8 just to buy all that food. Cracker Jacks, hamburgers, yeah. But it'll cost you $50 if he wins. Yeah, well, oh geez, how'd I ever get into this? If my father finds out. Alan slumped on the porch steps, gazing down at his sneakers, gnawing his thumbnail. Come on, said Joe, slapping on the shoulder. Cheer up. You haven't lost yet. Go ask your father. Chapter 24. The 12th Worm. You think Alan really meant it when he said he'd given up? Asked Billy, turning down the flame under the frying pan. He was cooking a toasted cheese and worm sandwich. He was cooking a toasted cheese and worm sandwich. I don't know, said Tom, looking in the refrigerator. I suppose so. He asked us to the Mets game. Say, was that chocolate pudding? Yeah, but don't take any. It's for supper. I could just scrape some off the top, and then you could tell your mother it fell upside down on the floor by mistake while you were getting the cheese out, and you scraped the dirty part off into the garbage. Well, said Billy doubtfully. Thomas Grout, said Billy's mother, coming in from the hall. I am surprised at you. Oh, Mrs. Forrester, I wouldn't have really done it. I was just, talking. Everybody talks. My father, Billy, my sisters, Annie, Charlotte, Polly. He was backing towards the door. Betty, Agnes, Columbus. I didn't know you had a sister named Columbus, Tom, said Billy's mother. Would you like some chocolate ice cream instead? Oh, sure, Mrs. Forrester, said Tom, relieved. He sat down at the table. It's my cousin who's named Tom Columbus, he grinned. Columbus, Ohio. He's a capital fellow, Mrs. Forrester. And then he had to grab the edge of the table to keep from rolling off the chair, laughing at his own joke. Billy looked disgusted. His mother opened the refrigerator, shaking her head. Chapter 25. Pearl Harbor. The car slid quietly to a stop under the streetlight outside Billy's house. Shh, whispered Alan to his father. Billy's asleep. His father glanced at Billy, snoring peacefully in the back seat, his plump cheeks sticky with orange soda. Alan, run up to the house and tell them I'm bringing Billy in. Billy's father met them at the front door, and taking Billy, whispered his thanks. Alan and his father went down the walk. Behind them, the porch light clicked off. In the back seat of the car, Joe and Alan wrestled gleefully. We did it! We've won! He'll never wake up now! Alan struggled out of Joe's grip and asked his father what time it was. Late. Almost midnight, I think. Joe pulled Alan's head down and tried to sit on it. He couldn't do it now even if he woke up. How could he find and cook and eat a worm in the dark? Hee hee! We've won! Chapter 26. Guadalcanal. But, slumped on the bathroom stool, his mother holding up his chin while she washed his face, Billy was waking. Hold still, dear. Did you have a good time? You're certainly home late. Is this part of winning the bet? Billy's eyes blinked sleepily. He had a gnawing feeling he had forgotten something. He hiccuped, gazing dopily down at the blue, fuzzy bath mat, yawned. He remembered in the morning. It couldn't be that Bet! He hadn't won yet. There were still 3 to go. 15. 15 worms in 15 days. Today was... He jumped up. Mom, I haven't eaten my worm today. And suddenly it all came to him. The whole trip. The candy bars, hot dogs, hamburgers, popcorn. What time is it, Mom? Quick. About 11:45. It was a trick. He snatched his pants off the floor. They were trying to make me forget. He tumbled and slid downstairs through the dining room, his shirt tail flying, yanked open the drawer in the kitchen. snatched at a flashlight, and drawer slipping out with a clatter and crashed onto the floor and slammed out the back door. The Finks! He scuttled across the back field towards Tom's house, searching the ground with a flashlight as he went. There! Darn! A stick! Geez, I hope I can find one. He stopped. There won't be time to cook it. He ran on. And no ketchup. He stopped. I'll bet Tom wasn't sick at all. He ran on. The night was moonless and close. He paused to heave over a rotten log in the high, dewy grass. Mealy bugs and scooters clambered over the stone wall into Tom's backyard, and all of a sudden, wrestling with a pup tent. Muffled grunts and thrashing. Tom, he yelled. Tom, it's me, Billy. They're trying to trick us. Tom and his younger brother Pete crawled out from under the pup tent. It was a trick, panted Billy. Alan and Joe were trying to make me forget. 15 worms in 15 days, and if I don't eat one in the next 10 minutes, Alan will say he won. It's almost midnight. And they left me home so I wouldn't remind you? Billy nodded. Have you got a worm? We'll have to find one. Tom dug back in the pup tent and came out with 2 flashlights. They zigzagged back and forth across the lawn, bent over, searching. I got one, cried Pete. Shh. I'll have to eat it raw, said Billy. He threw back his head. Wait, whispered Tom, grabbing his arms. You should do it where Alan and Joe can see you. Pete, run and get your siren out of the garage. The 13th Worm. Chapter 27. Under the streetlight in front of Alan's house, Tom and Pete knelt over the siren. Billy stood behind them, the nightcrawler squirming in his fingers. Now, wait till lots of lights come on all over in all the houses, said Tom. Then chomp it down. Ready, Pete? Now. The siren growled, winding slowly up until it hit screeched across the neighborhood, sending birds squawking and chirping into the air from the treetops and rooftops. Dogs began to bark. Windows lit up. There were confused shouts, bangs of windows slamming open. Ladies and gentlemen, shouted Tom through the dying whine of the siren. Alan Phelps and Joseph O'Hara. Through their finkiness and cheating, their lies and dirty... Come on, muttered Billy, his head thrown back, dangling the worm over his mouth. We haven't got much time. Alan Phelps and Joseph O'Hara, shouted Tom, has forced us to wake you up so that you may all now witness rat-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta, the eating of the 13th worm. He dropped to his knee. The siren wound slowly up to a screech. Billy dropped the crawler into his mouth and chewed furiously. His eyes closed, fell onto his knees, still chewing, his face turning beet red, toppled over on his side, still chewing, rolled and writhed the bed on the sidewalk, clutching his stomach, still chewing. Tom and Pete kneeling by the streetlight, working the screaming siren. Billy threw open his arms and lay still on his back under the glare of the streetlight, his mouth wide open. Ta-ra! Announced Tom, springing up and pointing to Billy. The 3 boys ran off into the darkness. As they went, Tom remembered. Alan! Tom yelled. Remember, Alan Phelps and Joseph O'Hara! Chapter 28. Hello, Weir. A confused murmur rose up and down the street. Suddenly, a boy shouted out from the Phelps house. Finks! Alan's father dragged him back from the window. Is that why you were stuffing Billy with candy and junk all day? Leave me alone. Yeah, we were trying to trick him, the Fink. Finks! He yelled at the top of his voice, lunging towards the window. Quiet. His father sat him down hard in a chair. Joe peered furtively through the fringe of the bedspread. As soon as he had heard the siren and Tom's yell, he'd crawled under the bed. And that's why Billy woke up the whole neighborhood? To show you that he hadn't been tricked? Yes. His father let go of Alan's pajama collar. In the doorway, Alan's mother threw up her hands and went off to the bathroom to take 2 aspirin. The next day, Alan and Joe tramped from house to house in the neighborhood, knocking on each door and then reciting in chorus. Hello, we're Alan Phelps and Joseph O'Hara. We're the reason you were waked up in the middle of the night last night, and we're sorry. Breath. You'll be happy to know our parents have punished us and we can't look at television or have any dessert for a month, and our allowances have been taken away for 2 weeks. We promise that it will never happen again. At least not in this neighborhood, muttered Joe as the last door closed behind them. And Alan, said his father at dinner that night, I don't want to hear that there has been any repetition of this incident at Billy or Tom's house or anywhere else. Do you understand that? But we can't let them get away with it, Mr. Phelps, called Joe from the living room where he was waiting for Alan to finish dinner. There will be no repetition of this incident or anything like it, repeated Mr. Phelps. You tried to trick Billy and lost. That will be the end of the matter. Uh-oh, there's a bad word in here that I don't want to hear anybody saying after I've read it aloud. Chapter 29. You know what you are, said Alan, his nose almost touching Billy's. You're a bastard. And you're another, sneered Billy through clenched teeth. And a cheating, lying, dirty, snot-nosed, cheating, lying one. If you say 2 more words, said Alan, you'll know what? I'll beat your head in. Billy breathed hard. I'm right behind you, muttered Tom, peering grimly over Billy's shoulder, his fists clenched. Yeah, said Joe from behind Alan. So what? We can lick you both with our hands tied behind our backs and paper bags over our heads. You couldn't lick a flea. Yeah? Yeah. Spiffle, whack, thump. Someone's choking. Not fair. Thump, gouge. Joe crawled off behind a tree, nose bleeding. Whomp. He's pulling hair. He's scratching. Donk. Billy, twist. Billy, it's just you and me. Where are the others? Tom and Billy untangled and sat up, bruised, scratched, dusty. Shirts torn, hair tousled. Tom's nose was bleeding. Billy's shoe would come off. Yeah, sassed Alan and Joe from behind the tree. Billy started to shake his fist at them and clambered up, but then sank back. Tom panted beside him, bleary-eyed. Yeah, all worn out? Can't find any more? Alan scooped up a handful of mud and flung it at Tom and Billy. Then Joe did the same. Billy and Tom scrambled up and pelted back. Mud spattered against trees and bushes. Alan began to cry. A rock hit Billy over the eye. He sat down backwards in the mud, covering his head with his hands. Oh my gosh. Billy started to shake. Oops. Covering his head with his arms, sobbing. Joe and Tom stopped throwing. Joe grabbed Alan. Come on. Tom knelt beside Billy. Let me see, Billy. Is it bad? Take your arms away so I can see. He tried to pull Billy's arms apart. Billy wrenched away. Come on, said Tom in a scared voice. I'll take you home. Come on. Your mother can take you to the doctor. Chapter 30. The Peace Treaty. Alan and Joe sat on the sofa, Tom and Billy on 2 straight chairs opposite them. Now, said Alan's father, what's this all about? All 4 boys began talking at once, accusing, recounting, explaining. All right, said Alan's father after a while, that's enough. Now we know it's got something to do with the bet Alan and Billy made. But Mr. O'Hara and I aren't going to get involved in that. You'll have to settle that among yourselves. You 4 boys have been friends too long to start fighting now, said Mr. O'Hara. You really hurt each other. Look at yourselves. Your faces are all bruised and muddy. Talk it over. Work things out. Then you can shake and be friends again. Joe muttered under his breath. I couldn't be friends with those rats. We'll be out in the kitchen, said Alan's father. When you've settled it, call us, and we'll go down to Friendly's for some ice cream. Okay? Billy and Alan and Tom nodded. The 2 fathers left the room. The boys gazed silently at each other. After a while, Alan said, It wasn't us that scratched Tom. Billy did it. Another silence. Did you have stitches? Billy asked Alan. Nah. Did you? Billy shook his head. More silence. You tried to cheat, said Billy. That wasn't cheating. We were just trying to trick you. Yeah, but before that, when you glued two worms together, that was cheating. You would have cheated too if you'd been losing. Billy thought about it. Okay, but look, no more cheating. I've already eaten 13 worms. You know I can eat two more. Heck, if I buy George Cunningham's brother's mini bike, we can all use it. We'll all have fun with it. Joe and Alan glanced at each other. Okay, said Joe. You win. He wins. Alan? Yeah, but Alan scratched his eyebrow, glanced at Joe. Yeah, but Joe stood up. Come on. At least we'll get a milkshake out of it. The Letter. Chapter 31. Billy lifted the worm out of the frying pan with the cooking tongs, and it curled back and forth on his peanut butter sandwich. I bet they'd try something, he said. Joe won't give up. Alan might, but Joe won't. Tom was carving his initials in the leg of the kitchen table chair. Kitchen in the leg of the kitchen table. Yeah, but it's not Joe's bet. What does he care? Just the same, I bet he tries something. Billy sat down on the table, turning the sandwich this way and that, looking for the best spot to take his first bite. Emily came in from the dining room. You and Mom got a letter. Chewing, Billy opened it. From Dr. Charles M. McGrath. And it says midnight, August 15th, 1923. Dear Mrs. Forrester, I have just made a distressing discovery. While leafing through a medical journal before going up to bed, I noticed an article entitled Poisons in the Home Garden, a subject which necessarily fascinates me. As I glanced through the article, a phrase caught my eye. Lumbricus terrestris, the common earthworm. I read on. Mrs. Forrester, let me assure you first of all that there is no cause for undue alarm. However, you will, I'm sure, be concerned to learn that, especially between the months of July and August, parents must be aware of the common earthworm, some varieties of which are known to secrete a substance, lumbrius corpusculosus, which, though not malignant to the skin, is sometimes harmful if swallowed. Dr. A. C. Roosevelt of Hyde Park, New York, reports that 10% of the boys studied reported no ill effects except induced paralysis of the lower Fulmer region. 40% reported abdominal cramping, triple vision lasting from 2 to 3 years and impairing school performance, and extreme lassitude. Autopsy reports have not yet been received from the remaining 50%, and so no final conclusion can be drawn, but extreme caution is urged since the blackened and pimply face of the subjects lead one to suspect the worst. Mrs. Forrester, as your friend and family physician, I would strongly recommend that your son, William, eat no more worms until I return on Thursday from New York City and can give him a thorough examination. Yours sincerely, Charles McGrath. Uh-oh. We're going to stop there, and we'll finish next time.